Thank you and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Elizabeth Dias. I'm a marketing manager here at Perficient. I'm excited to be moderating today's webinar on harnessing the power of cloud to drive business innovation. Today's session will cover a pragmatic approach and framework for innovation that can be applied to how you use the cloud today to transform your business. We are recording today and we'll be sure to email you with the information provided on how to access this after the session. Time permitting, we will answer questions at the end of the presentation, so please type those in the chat box at any time. In a moment, I will hand things over to our speakers, but first let me take you through a quick overview of Perficient. Perficient is a leading digital transformation consulting firm serving Global 2000 and enterprise customers throughout North America. With unparalleled IT, management consulting, and creative capabilities, Perficient and its Perficient Digital Agency deliver vision, execution, and value with outstanding digital experience, business optimization, and industry solutions. We have a broad network of locations across the U.S. as well as offshore facilities in India and China. Founded in 1997, we're a public company with more than 3,000 employees. We form strategic partnerships with each of the major technology vendors and have also dedicated business solutions and industry practices. Finally, a little background on our speakers. I'm joined today by Jim Hertzfeld, who is a principal in our Perficient Digital Agency. He covers strategy and innovation, as well as Joel Simpson, who's the director of our cloud and DevOps practice at Perficient. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jim.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Just to kind of get things going, we wanted to spend today talking about how cloud and innovation work together, how they kind of feed each other in terms of strategies and tools for your organization. But we wanted to start it off with a little preamble on why both are important. And that is really rooted in this concept of customer centricity, which is one of the most compelling forces that it seems to be shaping many of our clients' strategies and business plans. And that's really that focus and a realization that customers are in control of their own shopping and buying journey in a lot of different ways. And we really rely and wanted to share four forces that are forcing other companies to adopt both innovation and a customer-centered focus. The first force is the concept that customers' expectations are rising every day. They have control over this journey because they have a sheer amount of choice. They have a lot of choices and options. We think of commerce as kind of one of the most obvious ones, but they really have a lot of transparency into the company's products and services, pricing, shipping options, product details, service details. Everything from ease of access to maybe my lease and buyout options to the amount of electricity I'm using in my dishwasher or where you can get a better price. So those expectations from customers are increasing every day, and it becomes more and more challenging to understand where those customers are and how to keep servicing them and maintain their loyalty and keep ahead of some of the competition. The second force is this idea of ongoing and continual connectedness. So we know all of us included are sort of always on, always connected. We're always up to date, sometimes faster than we realize our customers are. It sort of makes geography and location irrelevant. We don't have to go to a store. We don't have to make a visit. But at the same time, we can reach our customers anywhere. But we have to be incredibly relevant on when we can meet them. And that's where this lack of geography becomes the most relevant thing. So whether our customers are at home, on the job, at school, in the showroom, on the shop floor, on the train, that level of connectivity is something we have to contend with. The third is what that transparency and connectedness lead to is really a level of organizational velocity. And this is something we've heard, I think we can all relate to as well. Everything is faster, from shipping times to product development cycles to product launches, viral media moments, and so forth, so on. We're in a very competitive environment where it's not the big that eat the small, but it's the fast that eat the slow. And so this just sort of trickles down into everything our customers do and that we need to do and be responsive about. And the fourth is because of all this transparency, new touch points, new ways to interact. Means we're building and amassing huge amounts of data about our customers, which gives us some transparency backwards to understand what their needs are, their sentiments, what they think about your brands and products, how they shop, and so forth, which really means we have a responsibility to be then even more responsive in our offers and promotions and trying to personalize better as well. So for a lot of these reasons, and these may not be new to you, but they've been emerging and solidifying over the last several years. Customers then or our clients need to think about how we innovate. And so, we thought this preamble was important to really set the stage for why innovation is important. And we have kind of I think a simple definition of innovation, and that is it's really something new that satisfies an unmet customer need. But there's a lot of hype around innovation, and we really want to take a moment to kind of ground that a little further. So this spectrum, or this diagram, speaks to the concept that innovation is really a spectrum of things. We hear a lot about disruptive innovation, very newsworthy. There's a lot of hype around it. But at another end of the spectrum, companies can innovate in a sustaining way, and everything in between. So when we think of sustainable or sustaining innovation, we tend to look inward and look at things that make our businesses more efficient, maybe a little faster. Maybe we exploit strengths or things that we already have. Let's say we have a lot of data that's well organized. How can we exploit that data? Or we have a product feature that is still leading in the marketplace. How do we make that better? And these tends to focus on more operational concerns, and a little more internal to the organization. The disruptive innovations at the other end of the spectrum tend to focus on growth. We want to make there are things that are more that become better instead of being exploiting what we have. We're exploring new ways to do business, new types of experiences, and so the disruptive innovations tend to fall more on the outside of our universe and focus more on the customer experiences that we just described. So we share this right away to kind of reinforce our definition of innovation, but also share with you that there's a spectrum of innovation, and good innovators are really reaching across the entire spectrum. They're looking inside as well as outside. Another element, I think, a best practice around innovation is to understand that not only is there a spectrum of innovation, but there are many different types of innovation. So I half jokingly say that most people, a lot of companies, and a lot of news cycles talk about what's new in terms of technology, what's the next mobile app, or what is IoT doing to be disruptive. And again, still a lot of value in sustaining innovations, and those tend to be or can follow a better process, so just a better way of doing business. For example, just the order and flow of the way things go. One of the examples I like around process innovation is Vistaprint, which is a very inexpensive utility to kind of self-printing. And what they found, one of their interesting process innovations was they found a way to group similar orders to reduce the production setup and obviously reduce the cost. So process innovation is one way to consider sustaining innovation. Product innovation, of course, the features and the experience itself. I think about just a smartphone, the features, the apps that go into a smartphone and make it intelligent, smart, and better, and more useful, a more consolidated device. And thirdly, on the inside is really service innovations. So how can we add utility to the product or the experience? And I think of things like Zappos, who was one of the leaders in service with two-way free shipping, which again, because things are moving faster and customer expectations are rising, becomes almost table stakes for other online retailers. On the right side, on the more disruptive spectrum end of the innovation spectrum, we tend to focus on innovations around experience. But I'd love to talk about personalization as an experiential innovation, utilizing data to make the right offers at the right times. Channel innovation. So what are we doing to add and improve the channel? There's a lot of hype around augmented reality and virtual reality in a retail setting, or wayfinding in a retail setting. So what are the things that we can do to make our various channels a better place to interact with? And finally, on the brand itself, I had an old favorite brand innovation, which was Yeti. The cooler. It's a great cooler, but it's also sort of become a lifestyle brand, and users sort of identify what that brand means as an outdoors person. But my new favorite is Hidden Valley Ranch, and if I won't spoil it, but check out Hidden Valley Ranch T-shirts, and you'll see that there's almost a lifestyle, as absurd as it sounds, around Hidden Valley Ranch and ranch dressing. So just kind of a fun one, but I want to, we love to think about innovation around this whole spectrum and around these many different types of innovation. So, the next element of innovation for us is how do you know when you're innovating well, or what are some best practices and things to think about in building your abilities to innovate? And we think of four things, or four sort of signs and habits that you're innovating well. One is you're really connecting with your customer needs, and this could extend to internal customers. Do you know who they are, what their sentiments are, can you identify what their unmet needs are? Second habit is, can we bring diverse sets of people and ideas together? How do we get different points of view, maybe views from the field, views from product, views from customers, and blend them together to sort of best understand the problem and get great ideation on possible solutions. Third is a little more of the approach and the process. How do you start small with innovation, not boil the ocean, move fast, share, test, get feedback? We'll touch on some of this later in our framework. And then finally, how do you take innovation from a lab or a garage and from an idea and actually release it to the wild and put it to good use and put it to work? So we think these are, what we want to express is these are pretty grounded concepts. But one of the things that we find that's most important as our clients sort of get great ideas and bright ideas is, and as they think about transitioning them to the wild and making use of that investment, is why are you innovating in the first place? Customer experience is important. It's a major trend we need to consider. But when we think about innovating, we have to think about really what's good and what's right for the business itself. And so we think about sort of these four terms, potential terms or business benefits equally: scalability, speed, savings, and simplicity. And we'll want to walk through these one at a time. But when we think about an innovation, when you think about a great idea, think about how it can scale. And what that tends to focus on is not just growth, but in how we attract new customers or new segments, or enhance the features or new service lines. But how do we create new marketing and sales solutions? How do we acquire new eyeballs and new sales and new segments? Part of scalability means sometimes scaling down and being flexible, and that's really what elasticity gets into. How do we change the business and approach quickly with demand spikes, with seasonality, maybe new product launches, or response to some event or some viral event or sensation? And how do we diversify the product line? So these are the types of innovations that can push for scale. Second is speed. Our innovations, like I mentioned earlier, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. So how do we build for speed? How do we innovate for speed? How can we remove steps, like maybe how do we speed up waiting for credit approval or some other approval, waiting on hold versus being able to do self-service? Eliminate wait times, remove steps, and just make things generally faster, both internally and for our customers. Thirdly, how do we inject savings into the business. So building, like we mentioned, building for efficiency, but how do we remove waste? How do we reduce headcount, licensing, materials, and create some economies of scale in the way we're running our business? And thirdly, how do we bring this all together to make things simpler primarily for our customers? How do we make things easier to use, more aesthetically pleasing, more sticky, and how do we improve overall usability? How can we reduce mistakes and sort of error-proof not just the way our products work, but the way that we service our customers as well? So when we think about, again, when we think about why we're considering technology movements like cloud, let's think about how that blends with innovation and how both of them really are serving the needs of the business overall, and then we're able to quantify and ground those values. So I think at this point, this takes us to a question, and we'd love your input on what your current business innovation goals might be. And so go ahead and take a few minutes here. I'll kind of talk through what we think these mean. And are you thinking about, and there we go. Okay, I got a response. Great. I want to make sure that was running. So are you thinking about connecting with customers? Is that a driver for innovation and understanding and connect with them better? Are you driving new strategies for growth and to maybe diversify the business? Are there new products and services that you're considering? Maybe new markets you're going to get into? Do we need to speed things up for our customers somewhere along the journey? Do we need to bring them in faster, service them faster, build some automation and reduce cost and waste in the organization? You just generally need to be more agile and flexible and responsive. Do we need to kind of modernize our systems and our experiences with better usability? We hope these are great questions and compelling questions for you folks. And Elizabeth, we could share those results. Okay. There we go. And so it looks like automation and cost reduction, not uncommon, makes a great business case, usually. It's pretty concrete and pretty tangible. I think that's pretty consistent with what we hear from a lot of customers in terms of not just innovation, but building a business case for any technology adoption. Agility and flexibility is also, I think, highly valued. Looks like everyone's pretty evenly split on the rest. So at this point, let me just transition to you, Joel. And with that in mind, with innovation in mind and customer experience in mind, and particularly why we're doing things for our business, take us through what that means and what that can mean with cloud.
Yeah, absolutely, will do. Thanks, Jim. And as Jim kind of covered, our perspective on what innovation is and what are some good characteristics of innovation, and then as we went through those four characteristics of scalability, speed, savings, simplicity, on really why do you innovate and what's the focus. And so what I wanted to do then is let's talk a little bit about how cloud supports some of those same focus areas, some of those same business drivers as innovation, so we can see a little bit of an overlap of the focus of what we believe good innovation should be focused in, and where cloud can come and actually support you in that journey. So often cloud's viewed as very much a technical asset, and it is that in many ways. But an often overlooked characteristic of the cloud that we believe strongly is really the ability to harness the services and capabilities of the cloud to really drive forward your innovation. So the next, we'll go through just these kind of four characteristics, and I'll talk about them from a cloud perspective. So the first one that Jim talked about was scalability. And that's definitely an area that's supported, by leveraging different cloud platforms. So, matter of fact, there was a survey done a year or so back by Gartner, and they were really ranking what are some of the main drivers for cloud buyers? One of the top drivers was this idea of operational agility or scalability, and that was an important and big impact on how the business operates, and that was a top driver for those who were taking the survey. So that the opportunities that your businesses will explore as you look at different market adjustments and encountering competition, the ability to be scalable and agile in that environment, and the ability to innovate are definitely all factors to consider as either you're making a decision to migrate to cloud or understanding how you can leverage the existing cloud capabilities that might already be within your organization, because the cloud can definitely and does definitely support scalability from that standpoint. So if we look at scalability and think about that in terms of agility too of the business, like I talked about before, cloud is not only just about servers and networking and providing elastic scalability of servers, which it does, and we'll talk some more about that later. But I think one of the interesting drivers that we really are seeing businesses who are really starting to mature in their cloud adoption and understand the capabilities of the cloud are really starting to see a closer alignment with business agility beyond just the IT agility. So, more often than not, I'll get questions from IT organizations as it relates to the cloud, and they're interested in how cloud can reduce costs, by looking at CapEx versus OpEx type spending and some of the cloud models, and that's an important factor, and we'll talk about that as it relates to the cloud. But I think as the Gartner survey showed, and as we work with more customers and kind of help them along the cloud journey, I think more and more we're realizing that it's not necessarily just a cloud. It's not necessarily just a cost decision that's driving people to the cloud, but a lot of those folks who are, like I mentioned, more mature in their journey are seeing this business agility being driven by moving to the cloud. And so we need to consider both sides of the IT equation, so to speak. One side of that equation being cost, and the other side is being the capability or agility. And we have to weigh kind of both sides of that equation to really understand and communicate effectively the value that cloud can bring to an organization. So this agility would provide the ability to enter into new markets, perhaps reduce complexity in existing processes, and improve internal productivity of employees and resources, and ultimately, like we mentioned, reduce costs. But I don't think that is necessarily the singular primary focus for organizations that are looking to leverage the cloud. So that was on a scalability factor, how cloud supports and kind of aligns with kind of our innovation vision. But I would say, beyond scalability, speed definitely comes into play when we're talking about the cloud. So I was working with a customer in the healthcare industry that was building. They provided a technology service to just different healthcare insurers. And each time they were onboarding a new client, a new customer, they were having to build out a custom environment with nearly 120 some odd servers for every new client that they were onboarding. And so, as you can imagine, that created a large backlog, and just the onboarding time for a new customer was fairly significant and fairly resource intensive. Both from a server resource and from a human resource perspective. So we took them through a cloud journey and kind of showed them how we can actually shift their product model to more of a SaaS-based model, and they were able to see significant onboarding time reduction, in the order of from months to days in kind of shifting that whole product to the cloud. So that was one example where we were able to leverage speed to do that and really drive some more innovation and make dramatic business impact. And another one, not necessarily, this is more from an internal perspective, an internal speed and optimization. We had a customer where this is more focused on their software development group, but they wanted, one of the key factors of cloud is really the ability to do this on-demand service provisioning, right? So if you need, in the case of this customer I'm talking about here, they wanted a cloud-based database instances where previously developers had to put in a request, put in a ticket, and wait 4 to 6 weeks, fairly long lag time to actually have a database instance provisioned for them, and so they could start doing some of their development. But with the cloud-based platform we moved this particular customer to, they moved from a 4 to 6 week lag time down to just literally minutes. And so the speed at which they were able to move forward in developing new software and testing out new ideas was dramatically impacted by leveraging and harnessing the cloud in that particular example. So I mentioned a little bit earlier around scalability and agility. While cost is not necessarily the only principle, the driving factor of cloud, it is an important one. And often people think about it from a cost perspective when they're making maybe a business case relating the move to cloud, which can be fairly complex to do, but they often are focused kind of on the hard cost savings, which are a little bit more obvious. So this is reduction on the physical hardware and software, reduction on capital expenditures to acquire the necessary hardware, the resources to support that, actual data center costs of electricity and other things. And so that's definitely a factor. But I think there's generally a larger, if not equal, cost savings that are found in what we kind of term as soft savings. So these are things that maybe aren't necessarily as explicit or as obvious, but still bring substantial cost savings when migrating to a cloud platform. So things like just reuse, being able to define services and applications in the cloud and be able to reuse those effectively often brings about significant cost savings. Increased productivity, even just the example that I mentioned earlier, just previously about the application developers and their ability to access the database services they need quickly, that can be significant. And even when you think about from an innovation perspective, the ability to remove roadblocks in testing out new ideas is significant. So this is another big area of savings when we were working with customers and helping them think through this is one area we tend to focus on. And there are other soft savings there, but I think the point is the overall cost savings model, if you look at, or equation, as you look at this, is more than just the hard savings. There are a lot of soft savings that you need to take into consideration when you're building out that business case. So this next diagram may be familiar to you or may not, but this is I like this diagram because it kind of clearly defines the challenges of a traditional infrastructure model. So if you look at the blue line, which is there, which is really indicating your typical traditional infrastructure model where you have large capital expenditures, you purchase hardware, purchase servers, and that's done at a fairly static incremental basis, and it's done based on your predicted demand against a particular application or group of applications. And the lead time in order to do this is fairly extensive, right? So in order to keep up with the predicted demand against your application, you have to acquire these servers and capacity in larger chunks and build above your demand by X percent in order to stay ahead of that. So there's big opportunity cost, as we kind of define here in this diagram, between the cost that you're spending on traditional hardware and where your actual demand is. So opportunity cost then is really is a potential talks about the potential loss of gain, right? So this is a waste of spend where you're building, in excess of 20 or 30% of capacity versus the actual demand and what's needed. And so that's one problem, right? So you're paying for servers and infrastructure that you don't need. But we also run into the other issue where if you try to keep your traditional hardware closer to your actual demand, if you keep that too tight, sometimes you run into the other problem where you're unable to serve customers, where your actual demand outspikes your capacity on your traditional hardware, right? So this just kind of describes the value of where you can identify cost savings within a cloud environment. So it's not that you spend less on infrastructure or you have less infrastructure. You just are only paying for what you need at any given time. So I think that's an important consideration, and it's important to the overall innovation model that we're talking about here. So, really, this is just what we're looking to say is just adding up the cost of infrastructure will not really get you to a total cloud picture. So this is definitely one piece of overall cloud, but you got to look at some of the other aspects, and I think we covered some of them today as it aligns with innovation and how it aligns and supports that. But really, to look at the overall picture, you have to consider not just the cost of cloud, but the overall value that you're going to get from it. And some of those values can be defined in the elasticity and scalability of the cloud, and as that supports your business, the speed, some of those soft savings, and then those are all things that really need to be factored in when you look at kind of your total ROI and considering your investment in cloud, and especially as you're considering the investment as a supporting case of your innovation. So one additional thing that needs to come into your consideration is the simplicity, and that was the last piece that Jim talked about. Really, what was one of the things you need to drive at, or one of the driving factors for innovation, where you need to go, is simplicity. And so, from a cloud perspective as well, it helps drive simplicity, not only from an infrastructure perspective, which we can talk about here, but even in examples that I've given, previously, simplifying customer onboarding, simplifying the ability to actually manage the infrastructure. So if you look at kind of your standard legacy infrastructure model, you buy and purchase, acquire servers. You have to provision those, maintain those, and then eventually patch and modify those as time goes on, and then decommission them. And so you have the fairly extensive and ongoing administration for the entire life cycle of that server. That becomes expensive. And there's kind of, when you look at this compared to the modern, more cloud-based approach, where things are more software-defined, driven by the provisioning of servers and networks are all done via APIs and configuration, and the life cycle of those assets are then much more automated. It really reduces, from an internal operations perspective, it reduces the amount of administration required. There's even this analogy of really cloud infrastructure. You may have heard this. It's been going around for a couple of years. It's really the analogy of aligning cloud infrastructure to be more like cattle rather than pets. So the analogy is, if in the cloud you treat your services like cattle, not like pets. If we're in a traditional infrastructure, if like you would for a pet, if your pet gets sick, you nourish it, you want to bring it back to health, it's part of the family. So you're going to spend a lot of time and care and effort to make sure that pet remains part of your family. And so there's a lot of energy spent on that. But in a cloud model, if the analogy goes, if a particular server gets sick, it's not considered a pet. It's more expendable in the cloud. You can actually eliminate that and just provision a new server without a lot of cost and effort having to decommission that. That's all handled by the cloud provider. So those are all important considerations to think about. So we got to treat cloud servers more like cattle. It's a little bit more. We can deprovision those without a lot of emotional attachment as compared to what we traditionally treat internal infrastructure with as. So the next, so that's, I guess the next we had just another poll here where we were going to talk about your top cloud initiatives. And just interested from a cloud perspective, we heard the last poll related to from your kind of goals from an innovation perspective. We're just interested in where are you from an organization thinking about cloud? Are there cloud initiatives going on? If so, what are some of the drivers for those? So we'll take a couple minutes or a minute here to get your responses there. But the first one is migrate on-prem infrastructure. Sometimes this is referred to as lift and shift. This might be some of the early moves to cloud for a lot of organizations is to move some initial on-prem infrastructure to the cloud. Or for those organizations, maybe you already have a cloud in place, usually multiple. I think current surveys I've seen is typical to have about 3.5 clouds for a standard enterprise, talking about both private and public. So maybe you're looking to optimize the use of that existing cloud or leveraging cloud for better engagement with your customers or collaboration internally and externally. Maybe leveraging cloud to gain better insight or manage costs, which sounded like a big innovation driver for a lot of you. Or perhaps as our outline here talks about, maybe you're leveraging cloud to speed up your innovation. So just collecting a couple last responses here, and then Elizabeth, we can go to the results, I guess, when we still have some more responses coming in here. Give just another 15 seconds. All right. If we want to go to the results here. Okay, so it looks like a large majority are looking to leveraging cloud to migrate on-prem. That's fairly typical, and we're seeing a lot of our customers, like I mentioned, this is a first step for a lot of organizations looking to go to cloud is leverage that. Great to see a high innovation engagement as it relates to the cloud. We believe strongly, as obviously is kind of the premise of this webinar. So I think that innovation factor is important, and we've seen that it's really important to a lot of our customers as well, and it looks like it's important to you guys as well. Okay, great. So we can move on. And the next section here, Jim, and I'll invite you to jump back in here, is really outlining. We've kind of outlined innovation, what we believe good innovation should look like, and what the goals of innovation should be. And I spent the last couple minutes talking about how cloud supports those characteristics of innovation. So now we can kind of bring it together with this innovation framework.
Sure. Thanks, Joel. By the way, I love the cattle and pets analogy. So I was thinking about obedience school for your server. That's probably on somebody's list. But I think that's sort of that level of maybe chaos and unpredictability is really one of the drivers for our innovation framework. The best innovations are really human-centered. They're sort of customer-centered. They are unwieldy. And they're sort of nonlinear and ambiguous, and that's why I think we adopt a special approach to opportunities to innovate. But we think about that in very traditional terms: people, process, and technology, and we'll dig into these a little deeper. But it really takes a variety of skill sets and perspectives to innovate, to understand the problem, to help ideate and build potential solutions to those problems. So you need a variety of perspectives. Process is important. The way in which we do things, the methods and activities that we follow matter. And finally, technology is, of course, a huge part of the innovation process. And of course, we think cloud is a huge enabler in not just building fast, scalable solutions, but in terms of innovating quickly and scaling, improving our innovations. But to focus on a couple of elements, and I'll cover a couple of these, and Joel let you talk about some of the technology. In the Agile world, we talk about an MVP, a minimum viable product, and I think it's a great concept to kind of get things off the ground. But we also think about an innovation team in terms of an MVT, what we call a minimum viable team. So while diversity of view and thought is important and perspectives, we really look at our core innovation teams tend to be built with a combination of some softer skills around what we call experience design and visual design. So how do we get in the minds of the customer, develop and ideate on potential experiences and features through different levels of prototyping, and then how do we sort of imagine what those look like, and then commit those to actual artifacts that can be prototyped and tested. Visual design skills become a big part of that, and then on the sort of more technical side, solution engineering and platform engineering are two kind of key skills. Solution engineering being the ability to take those concepts, experiences, and designs and materialize them in actual engineered code and prototypes. So a full stack development skill set is vital. There's a lot of great tools out there to help engineers become full stack engineers. And of course, having the platform to do that and to make sure that we can provision the platforms with which to innovate, simulate front ends and back ends, and support that engineering process. So some core and key roles in building that lab, if you will. The second part is the method. We're a huge advocate of design thinking as an innovation methodology. Now, design thinking, the term design might leave you thinking about experience design or a UI or an app, but an experience is much more than way more than the technology. It's the emotion, it's understanding the problem, it's what's unspoken by our customers and users, and it's also understanding what that means as a business and the way your business operates, runs, and comes together. And so design thinking is sort of a broad solution for rapidly iterating and ideating on these thoughts and consolidating and defining what the problem is in the first place through understanding the customer. So we empathize with our customer and we help define and shape and scope the problem so that we're not boiling the ocean. And then we begin the process of ideating, imagining, prototyping and building in low and high resolution concepts, and then evaluating those through a testing process. So there's a variety of methods and tools behind this, and we've had just a lot of fun and a lot of success with applying these methods. So it's great for a lot of things, nonlinear things, fantastic for innovation. And Joel, tell us, just kind of go ahead and share your perspective on how cloud as a technology set supports the innovation process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about when we're talking with organizations and helping them, understand how they might support innovation within the organization. We talk a lot about the things that Jim was talking about from a people and a process perspective, but then there are also tools that need to support that. Tools aren't the answer. You can't lead with a tool. I think a tool needs to support your process and support the people, but it's an important point. And so when we talk about the platform for innovation, definitely believe strongly it needs to be cloud-based. It needs to provide that elasticity, that scalability, that speed, all those characteristics that we were just talking about in order to really effectively support not only just rapid, prototyping and high-resolution testing, but then also support an actual runtime environment as you might release those ideas and those solutions into the world. While we realize they won't all be apps or web-based, that likely a portion of them will be. So not only does it need to be cloud-based, but it needs to have an ability to actually simulate and test out these ideas. So on a simulation idea, this is really the idea that the platform has the right features and services to support your different innovations, whether that's from a digital perspective or otherwise. So it needs to be able to the capability to rapidly construct code or models to be able to test out your ideas. And this is really around the idea of providing features for developers and even non-developers to contribute to kind of this rapid application development and being able to simulate out those ideas. And associated with that is to be able to not only simulate them but test them. And we believe strongly in one agile, what I call big A agile, which is the idea of principles behind agile development is this idea of test-driven. An important part of any platform that you select to support your innovation, cloud-based platform, it needs to have these capabilities to support supporting services and frameworks and capabilities to really to simplify and streamline a test-driven approach. A lot of that is through automation and through automation for testing of services and applications on the platform. And then this idea that it needs to be continuous. You want to have, not only from a process perspective, you want to have this continual feedback loop, kind of a continuous innovation perspective on everything, but there needs to be tools that support that as well. So this idea of having a continuous delivery pipeline to support any applications and solutions that you're building, so that it has to have the right tools and features to support that from a continuous innovation perspective as well. So those are all characteristics of platforms. And when we evaluate platforms for customers and help them identify what maybe would be a good fit for them, these are some of the main characteristics and criteria that we apply under each one of these categories to kind of help them select the right tool for the job, so to speak. So we wanted to, Jim, I guess we wanted to spend just the last couple minutes here looking at how we use some examples of some work we've done for some customers on helping support leveraging cloud and innovation to really support some of their business needs, and I want to give you some examples of that.
Yeah, Joe, let me cover. I'll cover the first one. This is a great story with a health system that was a bit of an answer looking for a question. So there was a fantastic cognitive technology that was looking for a good application in healthcare and direct patient care. And that was really matched with this concept of this particular provider had a readmit problem. What that means is, you go in for treatment and you come back, you're readmitted. Obviously, we want to get it right the first time, and there are a lot of things we can do that they can do to sort of reduce that propensity to be readmitted. But part of the innovation process and the modeling is to figure out why and getting to the root cause and getting to what are the most effective protocols to reduce readmission. So what we developed, we focused on this problem using design thinking, really helped define the root cause and put some boundaries and boxes around the issue. and then through a series of sort of analytics, we're able to and predictive models that were solutions that were cloud available. We're able to develop a model for predicting who would readmit and who wouldn't and why, and that is feedback that helps develop new protocols and services and education to reduce those, or obviously reduce those readmits, the complication and cost that goes with it. So that prediction accuracy jumped. I don't recall, it was something. It was more than double, but we predicted that almost 100% to 93%. So what's great about this from sort of a cloud perspective is these were models and algorithms that could not be developed in-house, but were available and able to be provisioned rapidly through this cloud technology, cognitive cloud technology. One of the other elements to simple solutions like this is also to be able to aggregate data that is not in-house, so second and third-party data that can drive things like personalization and customer knowledge, things like weather, other data sets and benchmark models that wouldn't necessarily be included or in-house or accumulated by the organization. So getting the models and algorithms and potentially the data really drives the speed and service and savings ultimately by reducing these admits. And these were innovations that there was no other feasible way to do it. And I thought it was a great join of both an innovation and ideation process and a great technology that was sort of looking for the right question. Joel, you've got the...
Yeah, I got the next one, Jim. I was going to say that's a great story. I think a great example of innovation and cloud at work there. This is one of I like this one just because maybe I like video games, but Activision. If you're not familiar with them, they're a video game publisher here in the U.S. And this particular project we worked with Activision on was really related to their support group. So they were doing some analysis. They realized that a large percentage of their load to their support groups, or the call center and other places, was related to actually players having issues connecting to their games, so some of their online games. And when there was maybe an outage with the game or connectivity issue with a particular region, the support center would get flooded with these requests, and they realized the majority of their time was actually spent addressing some of these support outages. So they really had to come up with kind of a new approach, a new thought, a new innovative way to address the issues that the experiences that the players were experiencing. So the way we worked with that division and the decision and approach they ended up going with was to build out a solution on a cloud platform. And they really built out an innovative self-experience solution, which significantly, in the end, ended up significantly reducing the number of calls to their support center by a fairly reasonable percent. And what they were able to do was really set up an easy self-service site, so the players could, rather than opening a support ticket if they had issues, could go and monitor the status of the connectivity issues over the platform they were experiencing on their own without actually invoking the support staff. And by moving this to a cloud-based model, they were able to quickly and rapidly deploy this. They had the national reach that was required to support this kind of solution, and they had it. They had that all available rapidly and at their fingertips, so to speak, as they were deploying the solution, because they were leveraging this cloud-based platform, and it made a direct impact on their business, especially or certainly on their support organization, as a reduced impact and in this case probably reduced cost required to support those connectivity issue requests. So another cool company, cool example of just taking some, in this case, probably sustaining innovation ideas and how to drive more optimization within their support center by leveraging some innovative thinking and approaches with cloud. So I think we've, Elizabeth, we've hit the end of our pre-forma content. We are now into the questions. If anyone had any questions, I guess we can address them now.
Great, perfect. Just as a reminder, we are taking questions through the chat box, so feel free to type any questions you might have at this time, and I'll field them to both Jim and Joel. I'll give everyone a minute a sec here. I do have one that I can start off with as things roll in. So going back to kind of the design thinking process, if your organization is new to the process of design thinking, start and introduce that to my team. Jim, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. The question is, what's the best way to sort of introduce design thinking to my team?
Yep.
Yeah. So the first thing we like to say about design thinking, and I guess innovation, is we got to, design thinking is not for every problem or every opportunity. It tends to be at home with, like I said, sort of nonlinear, human-centered, ambiguous, big hairy problems, right? And or big wicked problems. So it's not. Some things are better off sort of being very data-driven or very linear. Kind of finding the root cause of a a product failure. Tends to be or can be more of a linear process and traditional process. So I think design thinking is best, sort of applied to the right problems. I think you also don't want to just limit design thinking to design. I think that's obviously I don't want to call it a misnomer. I just don't want people to think of design thinking is something for creatives and artists and aesthetics. And the other value is the idea that you don't want to boil the ocean with design thinking, but you do need to think big. And there's a phrase we love to use a lot. It drives a lot of thinking. I think it brings a lot of people together and gets people started, because I think a lot of big thinking sort of collapses under its own weight. And you've heard the terms, analysis paralysis and things that kind of get in our way, and because it's too much. You do have to think big, but if you're going to think big, you really need to start small, and you need to act fast, because people are outmaneuvering you, the competition's there. But you got to get a problem that you can get your arms around. People need to learn the process. They need to kind of live the process, and they need to see the results, but they need to have kind of a North Star big picture to work from. And then finally, I think that hopefully the tone of this whole webinar is make sure you're doing what's right for the business. Make sure you're focusing on speed, scale, savings, simplicity, and above all, your customer.
Great, Jim. One question here. Does every company need a cloud? How can our sales or business development teams go to market with cloud solutions and leverage it?
Yeah, this is Joel. I can comment on that. I would say initially the prevailing direction is the high majority of our customers are moving to the cloud. So the right answer for your organization is going to be organizational, very dependent on your organization, the things that you're doing, what services you're providing. But I'll say, don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but large percentages of product companies and service companies, upwards of 85-90%, are saying over the next 3 to 4 years they will either be 100% in the cloud or will have a large majority of their services and products available in the cloud. So it's definitely a prevailing direction cross industry for those. So I would say to answer the first part of the question, do you have to be? I don't know. I don't know your organization, but I would say a good chance is yes. You should probably be thinking about that if you're not already there. And the second one is around going to market. I think it depends on, again, what that product is, but again, I think some of these capabilities and characteristics we talked about even that are supporting the cloud and really that good innovation is focused on are all good things, characteristics that would help drive the go-to-market strategy for your cloud, right? So whether it makes things simpler for your customer, whether maybe you can provide a service at a better cost point for your customer, you could scale and reach new customer, new customer groups. All those things I think are underpinned by a combination of good innovation and a solid cloud platform. So they could be, those could be all things to consider.
Perfect. I think we're going to have to wrap things up here, unfortunately, because we've reached the top of the hour. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. And just as a reminder, if we did not get to your question, we'd be happy to address it offline. And we will be sending out a copy of this recording as well as the slides after the webinar. So thanks again for everyone joining.